I thought that today I would show you how I buy, process, prep, and store my nuts for baking and cooking. I really like to use nuts when I bake and when I cook, mixing it in with like pastas and meats. It has a nice flavor, it adds some extra crunch, and it also has some extra good fat for you. So, because I do a lot of cooking and baking, I like to buy my nuts in bulk and I prep them ahead of time so that way they are ready for me to cook with. Now, before I kind of get into this, I will preface this video by saying that the particular method and technique that I do is not designed for long-term storage. In order to keep nuts for longer, you actually want to keep them whole. And if you keep them in their shells, they'll last even longer. So this video is not about long-term storage for nuts. This video is about how I make it easier by prepping my nuts ahead of time in order to bake and cook and have them ready to go, easily accessible. And when I bake, I can just put my nuts in. I don't have to do anything ahead of time. So I tend to, again, buy my nuts in bulk. And I will buy anywhere from like 5 pounds to 10 pounds at a time. I like to have all of my different types of nuts. So you can see some of my containers here: almonds, cashews, hazelnuts, macadamia, pecans, pistachio, walnuts. I also have pine nuts. So I like to have everything on hand. So whenever I am trying a new recipe or a new dish, I have the nuts ready to go. I don't have to run to the store to grab them. And usually when you're getting kind of small containers, the price is more per pound. So it's more expensive doing it kind of piecemeal. So I tend to buy my nuts online. I'll kind of shop around. And because I am buying anywhere from 5 to 10 pounds at a time, the price per pound is cheaper, even though you might be paying a little bit more up front, but in the long run, it is a cheaper price. I do tend to look for nuts that are already shelled because I don't want to have to bother with taking the shells off when I'm doing this. But I do tend to look for nuts that are whole and that aren't like cut up or chopped up. Just ignore this package. I just happened to, someone gave me that, so that's why that's in there. But I tend to buy them whole because they are the cheapest, as opposed to if you get them pieces, the manufacturer or the company is now processing the nuts a little bit more, so that drives up the price. So I tend to buy whole nuts, but ones that are already shelled, so I can skip that process. Again, I have my containers kind of ready here, so let me show you what I do. So it's pretty straightforward. I use a salad shooter in order to cut all of my nuts. So I use the particular blade that looks like this, and I just run all of my nuts through here so it dices them really nice and small. I've had this for about 20 years and it works great. It's technically designed for vegetables, so like carrots and apples, radishes, things like that. But I've also found that it works really well for chopping up chocolate into small pieces, and I use it whenever I process my nuts. So basically we're just going to take our bag of almonds, just going to dump them into the bowl to make it a little bit easier for me. And then we're going to put some nuts into this top section, and then once you turn them on, they're going to come out of this opening. So it makes this very fine, kind of coarse chopped up pieces of the nuts. So then when I put it into baking or cook with them, I get the flavor and the texture, but not those big chunks. So I'm going to finish up the rest of the bag. So this is what 3 pounds of chopped up almonds looks like. I finished the whole bag. You can either put it back into the original container, or I'm going to put them into special Tupperware containers that I have. and then I'm gonna finish processing all of the nuts the same way. So I have finished cutting up all of my nuts, and they're all in this nice fine kind of a powdery, not quite powdery form. And I just love seeing them like this because it makes me so excited. I can just start baking and cooking, and I just don't have any more work to do. I just throw it into my recipes. And they also just look so pretty. So I have these containers that I put them in. You can also just put them into, Ziploc bags, freezer bags, those, I forget what they're called, but where you suck the air out of them. You can put them into canning jars, glass jars, whatever works for you, whatever works for your storage. I tend to do a large batch at a time, and I don't really worry about long-term storage for me because I use so much nuts in my baking that I just go through them so quickly. So I don't really have to worry about long-term storage. But if this is not something that's feasible for you, you might not need to do like 5 or 10 pounds at a time. You might be okay just doing 1 pound at a time. You might not necessarily do all the nuts either. You might just use the particular nuts that you like to cook and bake with. So you can kind of change it up to fit your style of baking and your storage habits. So this is what I do, and I thought I would just share just this little thing that I do in my kitchen to make baking and cooking easier for me. So let me know in the comments below what tips you have, what things you like to do with your nuts, how you store them, what kind of nuts you use a lot of, whatever you want, just throw that into the comments below. Thanks.